Chapter 71. Someone else arrived. Garrett turned around, pleasantly surprised. Elder Donald. It was another familiar face, Elder Donald from the Temple of the Spring Goddess, the only person Garrett had managed to gain favor within the temple given his past blunders with the exploration team. It seemed like he was finally allowed to participate again after being reprimanded. Elder Donald, is your temple here to help too? I happened to pass by. Elder Donald strode in briskly, glancing around and seeing the various marks on the wounded, his eyes brightened. This is a good idea. Young Garrett, where do you need my assistance the most? This woman. Garrett pointed at a middle-aged woman clutching her abdomen. Elder Donald lowered his gaze, his brows furrowing immediately. This kind of injury, I'm afraid I can't. Do what you can. Wait for the elders to arrive. They will come. Of course. Elder Donald fell silent. He and the two lower-ranked priests he brought with him stood side by side, murmuring prayers. Beams of white light poured onto the wounded. Garrett hurried over to observe closely. The middle-aged woman's condition gradually stabilized under the healing spell. Even so, Garrett couldn't help but worry. Internal injuries worsened quickly. When will the higher-ups arrive? They were indeed on their way. Bald Bishop dashed out of the Lord's mansion, scanning the crowd gathered in the courtyard. With such a dense crowd, there were no faster means than using their own legs. As he rushed out, a gust of wind blew. Elder Elwin's robe billowing as he caught up. They exchanged a glance and without a word, sprinted forward, determined not to be slower than the old man or the bald bishop. The high priest from the Temple of the Spring Goddess, however, was less hurried. Rising leisurely, he accompanied Lord Joan out, taking their time to queue up for the carriage. The Lord, the high priest, the mages, and curious nobles all orderly formed lines and departed. Mage Elliot, amidst the crowd, overheard a woman at the back of the line incessantly speaking. That lad is just a priest's apprentice. If they let him handle this, those who might have survived won't make it out alive. If Garrett heard this commentary, he'd surely say, even if it's just one person, I wouldn't want to see them perish. He entrusted the middle-aged woman to Elder Donald and dashed towards the dark zone. The red and yellow zones were already taken care of. If there was any chance to save those two at the back, he must. In the dark zone, there were only two casualties, an adult male and a young girl. The two priests from the Nature Gods sect, Anthony and Joanna, were treating them, beads of sweat forming on their foreheads. Garrett quickened his pace. Just a few steps away from the dark zone, Joanna cried out, "She's not breathing." Lilamy Lila, a piercing wail echoed. Garrett's heart squeezed. He almost halted, contemplating a glance backward. This girl, was she the daughter of the woman he saw at the accident site, the one the mother, with a broken leg, desperately tried to save? The child he'd marked as black, indicating no breathing or heartbeat, only to be rescued later? If only I'd been quicker, if I'd prioritized her. Her heartbeat and breath had returned before. If she'd been treated promptly, maybe, just maybe. Was I wrong? No, I wasn't. Garrett gritted his teeth, hastening his steps. In times of great calamity, the principles of sorting the wounded and prioritizing treatment were derived from countless experiences and sacrifices, a rule to be followed, not crossed. Continue the healing spells, he shouted, rushing over. Let me see her. Was she not breathing just now? She wasn't. Joanna hurriedly replied. She managed just that sentence before bowing her head in prayer. Garrett's question followed. And her heartbeat? Joanna shook her head vigorously. She couldn't spare a moment to speak, her face marked with 3 red streaks as if stickers had lost their shine. She chanted rapidly while Garrett pressed his fingers against the girl's pulse, then checked her neck. His heart tightened. Then relaxed. Heartbeat stopped abruptly. But the pulsation beneath his fingertips indicated the girl hadn't bled out yet. There was hope. Hope of saving her remained. Maintain the healing spells. I'll take over from here. The little girl lay on the tavern's long table, pale and motionless. Her nostrils unmoving. Garrett took in the table's height at a glance, propped himself up, and knelt on either side of the girl. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation. You handle the breaths. Thank heavens for the CPR training he'd given them before. They wouldn't need to perform chest compressions, just focus on breathing. Hopefully they wouldn't falter. 1, 2, 3. 29, 30. Breath, Garrett roared. Joanna swiftly leaned over, tilting the girl's head back, pinching her nose shut. She took a deep breath and sealed her lips over the girl's, exhaling forcefully. Garrett stared intently at the girl's chest. Once, twice, Continue chest compressions. 30 chest compressions. 2 breaths. Another 30 compressions. 2 breaths. On and on without pause. The table was hard, and within a minute or two, Garrett's knees felt like they'd been stabbed. He completed 5 cycles in 1 breath, arms aching, sweat pouring. Yet he didn't dare stop checking for pulse, checking for breath, confirming no revival, and continuing. According to guidelines in CPR, it's recommended to switch the person performing chest compressions every 2 minutes or after 5 cycles. But Garrett dared not let others take over. Even certified doctors might make mistakes during their first rescue attempt, let alone these priests who had only attended lectures. Persist. Keep going. Little Lila's life is in your hands. Keep going, Garrett. You can do this, you surely can. Seasoned healers have persisted alone for over an hour, pulling people back from the brink of death. When will the reinforcements come? Gritting his teeth, Garrett pressed down with all his might. Down, up, down, up. Beads of sweat from his forehead dripped onto the little girl. Joanna glanced at him, too preoccupied to speak, chanting her prayers even faster. I'm here. A shout from the doorway. Elder Elwyn rushed in, followed closely by Bald Bishop. They assessed the situation and hurried to Garrett's side. A gentle, abundant light raining down, ignoring them. Garrett, gritting his teeth, continued the compressions after this round of CPR, checking once more, placing his fingers under Lila's neck. An overwhelming surge of joy enveloped Garrett under his fingertips. There was vitality, pulsating steadily. The girl's heartbeat had returned. She's saved. She's saved. Garrett sighed, struggling to get off the table. But as soon as he moved, excruciating pain shot through his knees, and his body slumped sideways, falling to the ground beside the table. Chapter 72. With 2 big shots around, Garrett Nordmark wouldn't come to harm. As he tumbled down, Elder Elwyn Wilkinson didn't even glance his way but quietly extended a vine from his foot. It wound around Garrett's waist, lifting him high and gently placing him down. Garrett sat on the ground, drenched in sweat, rubbing his knees and panting, feeling lucky. Having big shots as teachers is great. Finally shifting the blame, Garrett rested on the ground for half a minute before limping to survey other wards. Elder Elwyn and the bald archbishop were busy while Lord Joan, the city master, was leisurely chatting away in his carriage. Accompanying him was an aged mage, the one who sat beside Mage Gelman earlier. The old mage glanced left and right and suddenly exclaimed, "That hawk!" A hawk incessantly circled above the shop. Its cries echoed, the red cloth on its talons fluttering like a flag. Lord Joan gazed up and exclaimed, "Right there." As a city lord, revelry and dalliances were fine. A few mistresses didn't matter much, even if his martial prowess didn't measure up. But one thing had to be remembered. What extraordinary organizations existed in the city, how strong they were, and what their distinctive traits were when they acted. Animal companion, Lord Joan murmured. This is a distress signal from the Radiant Church, sending out an animal companion for help. How bad was the situation over there? Lord Joan gripped the window frame tightly. The carriage moved on, and soon, reports from the North Main Street streamed in waves. 10 injured, 17 injured, 29 injured. All transferred to nearby shops, no deaths for now. 10 severely injured, 19 lightly injured. 5 are unconscious. This is troublesome. Lord Joan frowned deeply. Meanwhile, the nobles in the convoy, with each new piece of information, grew increasingly agitated. Oh no, my niece was on North Main Street. My grandson said he was going out to play today. My mother-in-law was taking my little sister-in-law out shopping. Could they have run into this? Baroness Lona. My son is injured. Franz. Hurry to North Main Street, find the young priest, what was his name, and tell him to treat my nephew first. If he heals him well, he'll be rewarded. If not, I'll break his legs. The convoy sped up and surged forward. The crowds surged too, making it difficult to navigate through the city. Celebrating the Midsummer Festival, Knight Noland led the way, clearing the crowds while 2 squad leaders shouted incessantly, "Make way. Make way for the city lord. If they don't move, whip them," shouted a night guard beside Lord Joan's carriage. Knight Noland glanced over but said nothing. The 2 squad leaders didn't crack their whips either, just kept shouting, "Move aside. Quickly, move aside." Joking aside, young Garrett was already overwhelmed with work, adding a bunch of whip wounds wouldn't let him live. The convoy raced and jolted, splattering mud and unknown substances from under the wheels, finally arriving at the shop's entrance. Agile guards dismounted, rushing to assist Lord Joan out of the carriage. Once the city lord stood firm and turned around, he immediately grabbed someone to inquire, "What's the situation? How many casualties?" Reporting to the city lord. At the shop entrance, the city guards maintaining order stood upright, sounding infinitely proud. "Up until now, no one has died. Thank goodness, thank goodness." Lord Joan immediately relaxed. He hurried into the shop, where Elder Elwyn and the bald archbishop were each chanting healing spells. He approached them, expressing gratitude repeatedly. "Thank you both. It's all thanks to you two that these commoners' lives were saved." Elder Elwyn nodded in acknowledgement without speaking. The bald archbishop chuckled. "It's not our doing. When we arrived, young Garrett had already organized everything." Young Garrett. Here. A person rushed over from the red zone. Lord Joan squinted and saw a 16 or 17-year-old youth. His linen shirt was soaked, bloodstains adorned various places on his sleeves, wet black hair clung to his forehead, sweat trickling down his cheeks. "He's just an ordinary lad from a common family, but if the Archbishop of the War God's Temple would mentor him, he couldn't be overlooked." Thinking so, Lord Joan solemnly nodded, complimenting the youth's eyes. "You're Garrett Nordmark? Well done." Originally, there would have been a handshake, a pat on the shoulder, and then a reward, but seeing the lad in this state, let's skip to the third step. Lord Joan reached for his purse. Suddenly, the Grand Priestess of the Spring Goddess, who had entered with him, interjected in surprise. "Him? But isn't he a mage?" "A mage? Wasn't he a healer?" Lord Joan paused. He had heard about Garrett Nordmark before. The bald archbishop had spoken for him regarding healing Roman knight's wrist, but what was this about being a mage? Had there been a mistake? Lord Joan turned to look back. Just as he was about to inquire of the Grand Priestess, the old mage who had traveled with him staggered into the shop. Glancing around, he was immediately taken aback. Oh, a real mage indeed. To the old mage's eyes, the injured were marked with red, yellow, green, and black, clear signs of magical intervention. A city guard stood by the door holding a signboard with rows of large characters in red, yellow, green, and black, unmistakably written with magic. Level 3 and 4 priests to the red zone. Level 1 and 2 priests to the yellow zone. Priest apprentices to the green zone. Clean wounds, stop bleeding and bandage. Please adhere to the arrangement, treat according to the markings. That's the way to save the most lives. Quite interesting. The old mage couldn't help but laugh, categorizing the patients with priestly methods and then marking them with magical tricks. The apprentice in charge was an interesting kid, a real mage. Lord Joan furrowed his brow. The old mage grinned and nodded. Yes, indeed, a real mage, a new apprentice of the Mage Tower. A mage can also oversee healing? And command a group of healers? Didn't the bald archbishop give him credit? Lord Joan hesitated, uncertain whether to question it. The Grand Priestess had already spoken. Are you saying Garrett did all this? He's just a mage's apprentice. In a few short sentences, the nobles had disembarked one after another, crowding outside the shop. The shop was narrow, reeking of blood, deterring most from entering. Only peeking heads remained outside. Upon hearing the Grand Priestess's words, they whispered amongst themselves, "Mage's apprentice? A mage's apprentice doing a priest's job? Can it be real? Didn't the archbishop say this apprentice was in charge?" Oh, the temperament of the archbishop, you all know. A mage doubling as a healer? Who would believe it? The temple must be mad. Yeah, teaching knowledge and fostering faith, it's been so hard all these years. Teaching someone and then they leave for another place, which temple would agree? The discussions grew louder and Lord Joan's suspicion deepened. His hand that held the purse withdrew. A few coins didn't matter, but rewarding the wrong person would be embarrassing. What's going on with this lad? An apprentice causing so much trouble. Are you truly a mage's apprentice? Or a healer? Lord Joan asked with a furrowed brow. Garrett was about to respond when Elder Elwyn finished casting a healing spell and interjected with a smile. Yes, indeed, Garrett here is my disciple. Chapter 73. Disciple of the Elders of the Radiant Church? Viscount Joan relaxed. Whether Garrett Nordmark rotted in the pot or not, he was still one of his subjects. As long as his identity was sound, how to cultivate him wasn't his concern. But the high priest of the Spring Goddess Temple arched an eyebrow. Your disciple? Naturists always had issues. A good priest wasted on those mages. Priests sought devout faith, yet those mages, each one more lawless than the next, even their belief in deities seemed feigned. Your disciple, and you let him go learn magic. He couldn't help but question. Elder Elwin's bushy brows raised, a glint of healing magic in play. The old man bared a toothy grin, innocent yet cunning. Oh my, you're aware of our ways. Powers bestowed by the gods of nature come from nature itself. What's odd about dabbling in a bit of magic? If the child wants to learn, let him. You. The high priest seethed. Naturists were all lunatics. They'd regret coddling this little lad. He stormed forward, entering the depths of the shop. A quick glance led him to the most finely dressed wounded person, and he casually cast a healing spell. Great priest. Thank you, great priest. Save me please, I beg you. Tomorrow, no, tonight, I'll come and donate to the temple. The green zone erupted into cries. These conscious, mobile wounded, all categorized by Garrett as minor, had only a few priest apprentices tending to them. Despite their wealth, the previous arrivals were predominantly war god priests and naturist priests. All complying with Garrett's orders, even the wealthiest screamed their lungs out but didn't see higher-ranked priests hurrying over. Now, with the high priest intervening, the rich, minorly injured saw hope, and chaos ensued in the green zone. 2 more priests rushed in, unaware of the situation, bewildered, standing and looking around, unsure where to assist. Garrett observed from afar, contemplating maintaining order, opening his mouth but reconsidering. He aimed to uphold medical principles but wasn't foolish. What authority did he, a mere priest apprentice, have to meddle when faced with nobles and temple officials? In this society of nobility and clergy. Even in his previous modern world, with a supervisor leading a team, would a doctor dare make them queue? He averted his gaze, pretending not to see. Beside him, the bald bishop smirked, bellowing in a loud voice. 1st and 2nd rank priests to the yellow zone, 3rd and 4th rank to the red zone apprentices assist in the green zone. The entire building reverberated. Garrett resisted the urge to cover his ears, finding humor in it all. This volume, this bishop could have reversed the flow of a river in ancient times without a hitch. The high priest strained, pretending not to hear, solely focused on comforting the faithful and administering healing. The other priests quieted down, following the bald bishop's instructions. Viscount Joan looked around. Deciding to ignore the quarreling leaders of the church, he pulled out a money pouch, smiling as he tossed it around in his hand. You're good. Here, take this, it's your reward. Wow, money is a reward. There's a bonus. The jingle in the pouch sounded like it could be several dozen coins. Even if they were silver, that'd be a few months' wages unless they're not silver. Coming from the Lord, there should at least be some gold coins. Garrett brightened, yet another thought instantly surfaced. A rare opportunity to face the Lord. Rather than ask for money, why not seize the chance to accomplish something more important? He didn't reach out for the money pouch. Stepping back, he met Viscount Joan's gaze, bowing slightly. Thank you for your reward. Healing and saving lives are the duties of a healer. If I may seek your approval, I'd like to exchange the reward for something else. What? The Viscount was taken aback. Did this lad lack sense? Bargaining for a reward? His displeasure showed a bit, naturally prompting someone to intervene. A knight guarding the Viscount stepped forward, hand on his sword, barking bold. Garrett stood tall, showing no intention of changing his words. Elder Elwin and the bald bishop looked over, while on the other side, an old mage quietly approached. Suddenly, Viscount Joan smiled, waved his hand, dismissing the guardian knight. Oh, it's nothing, kid. What reward do you want? One red-faced, one white-faced said, pretending to be magnanimous. Garrett pretended not to notice the knight's expression, calmly speaking. I implore you to issue an order prohibiting defecation in the streets and relocating all excrement outside the city. Sewage flows breed diseases, causing plagues. For the well-being of the city residents, I beseech you to issue this order as a reward for my service. Nonsense. A voice interjected. The high priest from the spring goddess temple strode forward, his face dark. The goddess will protect her people. The goddess grants pure water sources. Plagues aren't possible. But Garrett attempted to argue. Elder Elwin and the bald bishop cut in unison. Garrett. Oh, stepping into someone else's territory? Temples were truly bothersome. Garrett silently bowed his head, inwardly grumbling. Viscount Joan, on the other hand, chuckled. Priest, don't take the lad too seriously. Well, kid, do you know how much money is in this pouch? If I issue that order, how much money would I spend? I don't know how much money is in the pouch, but I can calculate how much it would cost. Garrett swiftly calculated, already speaking as figures streamed out. The population of Heartland City, as far as I know, is around 20,000. The daily excrement is about 100 loads. If sold outside for a copper per load, that's 1 gold coin per day, 365 gold coins per year. As for cleaning the current excrement on the streets. He paused, about to shrug or gesture as if he didn't know. Before he could, Viscount Jones said, "You saved 29 people today. Originally, I planned to reward you with 29 gold coins. So, lad, why would I give you over 300 gold coins or even more as a reward? But people's health matters more. If cholera strikes, it won't be a matter of a few hundred gold coins. Besides, properly used, excrement can fertilize fields, significantly boosting crop yields. This investment is trivial." Garrett wanted to argue further, but Viscount Joan already raised his hand, tossing the money pouch to him. Amidst the jingle of coins, the Lord turned and departed. Chapter 74. Leaving already? Garrett frowned in disappointment. His money pouch felt heavy in his hand, jingling faintly, yet it did little to lift his spirits. In this city environment without running water and minimal access to clean water, diseases were practically imminent, with people relieving themselves anywhere they pleased. Cholera, viral hepatitis, typhoid fever, dysentery, a slew of infectious diseases, each capable of causing widespread devastation, all easily transmitted through contaminated water sources. Damn it, this was infuriating. Which goddess protected the people? Which goddess bestowed clean water? That tiny fountain at the temple gates couldn't possibly suffice. A sense of responsibility as a healer ignited within Garrett. When he first arrived, just surviving was a challenge, and he couldn't afford to be concerned about this. But now, with resources and influence, able to reach out to influential figures directly, to stand idly by would contradict his duties as a doctor. Teacher Garrett lifted his head. Seeking help, Elder Elwyn Wilkinson waved a hand, cutting him off mid-sentence. "The matters of the streets can wait for now. Tend to these injured." Exactly. The current injured took precedence over future patients. Garrett clenched his fists and dashed forward once more, with the city lord inspecting personally and the heads of the 3 major temples present. The priests quickly assembled, guided by a circling hawk in the sky. The servants of the god of nature arrived the fastest soon enough. With a rush, even the priests from the temple of the war god, who had been guarding their temple, arrived in full force after a while. Those war god priests who had been strolling around gradually rushed into shops, each taking on their respective roles. Garrett realized there wasn't much for him to do. Severely injured patients were being tended to by high-ranking priests. As for the lightly injured, it seemed they didn't need his assistance for minor treatments. Medical resources were overflowing. He stood aside, trying not to interfere with the priest's work. Unconsciously inching closer to the wall, he was suddenly tugged by his sleeve. "Sir, please, a healing spell, just one." Garrett snapped back to attention. "Right, a healing spell. Apart from clinical medical methods that required checks, infusions, or surgery, he had the healing spell. Although it was the lowest level with weak effects, it was still a healing spell. Just wait. I'll do it now." Garrett focused, channeling his intent to heal, guiding a white light to shoot from his fingertips. As the light descended, the wound before him slowly began to close, 1 inch, 2 inches. No change. His current healing ability could only mend superficial wounds less than 10 centimeters long. Tisk. Following the usual upgrade process won't cut it. A person from another world needs to cheat. Without cheating, with only 5 minor healing spells a day, what could he possibly heal? Garrett let his hand fall. The injured and the nearby assistant had been watching intently, sighing simultaneously at this point. The assistant asked in a hushed voice, "Sir, what can we do?" What could they do? He had no idea what they could do. Boil water? Give the injured sugar and salt water? Bring a basin over for washing wounds? It seemed like these tasks had already been taken care of. Garrett didn't know the answer himself. Seeing everyone looking at him expectantly, he casually said, "Pray." He uttered those words offhandedly, But everyone took it seriously. The assistant immediately bowed their head, clasping their hands together, murmuring softly. The injured also made an effort, raising their hands in a gesture of prayer. Great God of nature, I beseech your mercy. Great Goddess of the springs, I pray for your grace. Please bless your people. In times of disaster and illness, people were most inclined to seek the divine, one telling another, and soon, within moments, both inside and outside the small shop, there was a chorus of intertwining prayers, buzzing like a unified hum. Each sought their respective gods. The congregation jumbled together, yet their prayers became solemn and dignified surprisingly quickly. John, go outside, gather the faithful, lead them in prayer. The bald bishop turned and shouted loudly. Another war god priest looked over, envious. Leading the faithful in prayer was one of the fastest ways for a priest to connect with their faith and ascend, usually not given to novice priests, but the bishop directly called out John's name. Having a powerful friend was really nice. John nodded firmly and turned to leave. On the other side, Elder Elwin was instructing the junior priests he had brought. You go outside, gather the faithful, lead them in prayer. The area outside the shop quickly became chaotic. Soon, the sounds of prayers began from both left and right. Great God of nature, great war God. The prayers expanded in circles from dozens to hundreds, and even a few hundred people. More importantly, the faithful were guided into orderly lines, their voices praying to the God of nature, praying to the war god, all in unison, coming from both sides. As one side increased in volume, the other quickly followed suit, the momentum akin to chanting at a military training ground. People here. Garrett shrugged, brushing off the word ignorance silently, and cast the healing spell again. Soon, he widened his eyes in astonishment. This time, the healing spell's effect was more than twice as strong as before, mending wounds over 15 centimeters long. Unbelievable. This worked too? Prayer had this effect. Garrett finished his prayer and slipped away quietly, looking left and right. He couldn't make sense of it. He wasn't familiar with the effects of higher-level healing spells. He grabbed a novice priest who had just finished praying and wiped sweat from his brow. Does prayer really work? It does. The other looked at him as if he were clueless. After a moment, he pulled Garrett into a corner. Why else would we build temples? Why bring them here for treatment? Why sing hymns together? Why, during major festivals, start with a prayer before displaying miracles? With others' help, how much effort do we save? Wow. It really seems to work. If that's the case, when he treats in the future, he'll gather a group to pray, and the effect will immediately double. No, that's foolish. Garrett slapped his forehead. Why gather people? He was supposed to train assistants. All those priests were supposed to learn medical skills from him, set up a hospital, train a batch of doctors, gather together for prayers, perform surgeries in groups, even involve the patients and their families. Those who are ill or have family members ill, when they pray, they'd surely be the most devout. Patients pay for treatment and contribute their healing power for free. This idea was fantastic, absolutely perfect. Chapter 75. The stampede incident kept Garrett busy until evening. The injured, one by one, healed instantly under the treatment spell, either leaving on their own or being picked up by their families. Outside the shop, a priest stood, reminding each departing person. The treatment spell exerts a significant toll on the body. When you return, try not to overexert yourself. Remember to eat well. And then what? Just like that, they're released? Garrett watched as one patient after another left, gaping slowly. No follow-up cases, no revisits, not even a need to organize medical records. So, in this world where everything is achieved through healing spells, patients just bounce back and leave on their own. No need for records. A world without medical records. It's heaven. After a night of rescuing, having to squint at dozens of medical records, each needing to be perfectly organized according to regulations. What a nightmare. Front page, medical history, examination sheets, images, surgeries, consent forms, all in order. Examination sheets arranged by blood, urine, stool tests, liver and kidney functions, blood clotting, hepatitis. Each sheet aligned, the next one pressed under the serial number of the previous examination, doctor's signature, patient signature. Nurse's signature, not a single one could be missed. The medical department even conducts random checks. A single improper medical record could mean fines starting in the hundreds. But without records, how can you summarize experiences and lessons learned? Garrett agonized over whether, if he were to establish a hospital, he should promote a system of medical records. Oh, at least there's still a discharge fee. The injured and their families thanked profusely upon leaving, some immediately pulling out money pouches. While others promised repeatedly to donate to the temple, Garrett glanced left and right, slipping quietly next to Elder Elwin Wilkinson, tugging at his sleeve. "We don't have a temple in our guild, do we? Where will they donate then? Will they find us?" "Shoo!" Elder Elwin hushed him. Meanwhile, Mage Gelman strode over briskly, standing beside them. "Elder, is the treatment over? I need to take him back today. The council's master mage has arrived and the evaluation is set to begin in 2 days." "Enough." A mage apprentice, neglecting his duties, most of his energy focused on healing spells. Learning a bunch of tricks but not considering how to enhance their power, only how to use them for healing and curing. Even if it's his mentor evaluating, it's not guaranteed that he'll endure. Garrett was dragged back to the mage tower 3 steps at a time, no medical records written, no treatment fees collected, unable to find a bigwig to persuade about clearing the streets and preventing epidemics. Everywhere feels so unsettling. By the way, who's in charge of the evaluation? This question quickly found an answer as the carriage halted in front of the mage tower. The moment the people inside got out, a human cannonball dashed out, heading straight for the old mage who shared a ride with Mage Gelman. Grandpa, you're finally here. I've been so bored these past few months." Garrett took a closer look. "Oh, that mischievous kid? Just like him, also a mage apprentice, but this one didn't live on the 2nd floor. He lived on the 5th floor, reserved for masters and esteemed guests." Together with Mage Gelman, the books the mage apprentices needed to read were carried upstairs by this mischievous kid most of the time. Whenever he wanted to read, he had to go upstairs and compensate with a lot of flattery, and not every time. Would he succeed? Such a hassle. Garrett rolled his eyes inwardly. The old mage seemed quite fond of his grandson. Seeing the grandson charge over like a cannonball, a glimmer flickered in the old mage's hand, casting some kind of spell, and then he caught his grandson steadily, lifting him and spinning around. "Grandpa's little George, how have these few months been? Learned a few spells? Made any breakthroughs?" "None." The chubby-faced kid wrinkled his face. He wriggled in the old man's arms, breaking free, shouting loudly, "All you care about is breakthroughs. Breakthrough. You promised that coming out for a stroll would lead to a breakthrough, dragged me out forcibly, then just left me here. Can't eat well, can't rest well, how can I ever make a breakthrough?" "Garrett. Seriously, I think the conditions at the Mage Tower are quite good. Moreover, what's the excuse for not eating or resting well? Other big shots face hardships during adventures and break through at critical moments." Garrett lowered his head, pretending he didn't exist, listening in on the old man scolding and the kid raging, sneaking a glance left and right. Mage Elliot and Mage Karen, one on each side, stared ahead as if their eyes and ears had suddenly malfunctioned. Even Mage Gelman didn't intervene. He silently observed for a while, and when the grandfather-grandson duo was about to calm down, he stepped forward to advise, "Master, breakthroughs are all about seizing opportunities. George is still young. Becoming a mage apprentice at 10 is already quite exceptional. Besides, he's been really diligent these past few months." "I don't know him." The old mage snorted heavily. "In just a few months, others start from scratch, not even recognizing magical script, yet they break through to the peak of becoming mage apprentices. Even learning healing arts. But him, when I left and when I returned, he's the same." "Garrett. No way. Old man, you can scold your grandson all you want, but don't make me the target. I don't want to be the someone else's child you're comparing him to." The mischievous kid glared fiercely at Garrett, rolled his eyes, stuck out his tongue, made faces. After making faces, he lifted his right hand to his cheek, aiming towards Garrett, scratching the air repeatedly. From his expression, if magical swords could extend from his fingertips, he'd ensnare Garrett on the spot. Garrett lowered his head, pretending not to see. Unable to vent his anger, the kid stamped his feet and yelled, "All you do is compare me with others. Serena made a breakthrough and you say I'm not working hard. Alexander learned a new magic and you say I'm naughty. I'm only 10. Only 10. By the time I'm 16, I'll be a level 2 mage. The old mage sighed, he pinched his grandson's chubby cheeks, turned him away. Don't compare yourself to others. What are their conditions? What are yours? Others could only start learning magical scripts 2 months ago. When you were a little child, you tore magical books just for fun. You're progressing slower than others and you have the nerve to complain. George, with teary eyes from the twist, didn't know if it was from pain or anger. He pushed the old mage away forcefully, shouted, I hate Grandpa the most. Changed direction and stormed into the mage tower. The old mage shook his head helplessly. Turning to Gelman, he sighed and shrugged. These past months, this child has caused you trouble, hasn't he? Well, let's pick up the pace and finish this year's evaluation. Once we're done today, I'll take George away tomorrow. Master, it's already late today. Why not rest and start fresh tomorrow? It's not late. It's not your first evaluation. You know the projects. We'll take them one by one. All right? Chapter 76. The annual assessment of the Mage Tower wasn't surprising for Garrett Nordmark. In this day and age, the Health Bureau evaluated hospitals, departments assessed sections, and sections reviewed doctors. Everyone carried key performance indicators KPIs, striving for their metrics. He'd spent over a decade in his past job, undergoing evaluations year after year, was accustomed to it. The custodians of the Mage Tower, residing in the tower built by the Magic Council, drawing their salary and funds from the council, underwent an annual review. Wasn't that just par for the course? He calmly followed the others up to the 5th floor, watching the elder mage pull out a large leather-bound book, flipping through pages filled with tables at least the size of A4 paper. Reviewing left and right, he began ticking off each item one by one. First item. Maintenance of the Mage Tower. Just came up here. I took a look. Timely repairs to the Mage Tower and the magic circuits are smoothly functioning. No new facilities, but added a new set of alchemical tools. Let's give you a 90 on this. Mage Gelman nodded, unfazed. Clearly, he'd anticipated this evaluation. The elder mage lowered his head, scribbled a few lines, and continued. Second item, maintaining the Mage Tower's status during the midsummer feast in daylight. Your seating remained unchanged, the Lord's reception remained the same, and at least 5 nobles around expressed interest in sending their children for learning. However, you maintained the status quo without elevating the Mage Tower's position, so this item only scores an 82. Teacher. Mage Gelman called out, a mix of protest and appeal. The elder mage shook his head. The Magic Council's regulations are precise. Gelman, considering the teacher-student relationship, I'll push it to an 85 at most, no more. Huh? What kind of scoring system was this? It sounded oddly familiar. Garrett tiptoed, craning his neck, trying to peek at the table. The elder mage caught sight and waved, gathering the lower-ranked mages around, spreading the table among them. Haven't seen this before? Come, have a look. You're all mages, possibly future Mage Tower custodians. It's good to see this early. No harm. Mage Elliot glanced sorrowfully at Garrett and slowly inched forward. Who wanted to see this stuff? It's not like they hadn't seen it before. Last year, when their assessment score wasn't high, Mage Gelman slammed the assessment form in front of them and ranted for a good hour. Forget the Magic Council's assessment forms, anything resembling a table made them queasy until now. Garrett had no negative feelings. He eagerly moved forward, bowed slightly, and lowered his head to look at the table, and then he froze. Project names, definitions, calculation methods, weightage, project scores, overall scores, and at the bottom, 2 lines of small text. The first line stated the assessment criteria: 95 or above, grade A excellent; 94 to 90, grade B good; 89 to 80, grade C average; 79 to 60, grade D needs improvement; below 60, grade E suggested resignation. The second line was more frightening, detailing rewards and penalties for each grade. Just a glance and Garrett's mind conjured the image of the HR head at the hospital owing everyone $50,000 and looking embarrassed. Grade A, big rewards. Grade B, rewards. Tilted research resources. Grade C, no rewards or penalties. Grade D, resource deduction, salary deduction, 2 consecutive replacements. Grade E, stripping custodial qualifications, replacing the custodial mage. This, promotions, performance bonuses, paid deductions, job changes, encouraged resignations. What a well-structured KPI table. Who made this? Why would the Magic Council have this? It's like a blackout in front of my eyes. Why can't I escape this even after crossing over? Right, this magic council even has journals, papers, and the format is the one he's familiar with. There must have been another transmigrator. In this world, another transmigrator must have appeared to transform the magic council like this. And most likely, it's someone from the humanities, considering the mage's worldview is solely based on elements and not advancing into the periodic table. That predecessor transmigrator probably couldn't apply scientific research methods, so they just followed the existing path. Right, judging by the professionalism of this KPI table, they might have been an HR professional suppressing all curiosity and complaints. Garrett continued listening to the assessment process as he listened. He couldn't help but admire that predecessor HR person. Their success wasn't without reason, at least within this scope. He wouldn't have thought of it. For instance, the Mage Tower industry was detailed down to villages, workshops, stores, mineral resources, and flora-fauna resources as separate items. Under the village category, it was further divided into population, land area, irrigation, seasonal harvest, each with different scores. More terrifyingly, the table the Elder Mage brought also recorded the values and scores of the past 3 years. It was impossible to cheat. Fortunately, Mage Gelman had been managing the Mage Tower for several years. Though not exceptionally skilled in management, he hadn't made any major mistakes. Following the previous 2 years' rules, he managed an 85 score, not too high, but it didn't drag down the average. Next came the training and progress of the mages. This was a crucial assessment as, after all, within the Magic Council, power held greater importance than anything else. This section held a 30 weightage, and the Elder Mage didn't go easy, having everyone at the Mage Tower cast spells for individual evaluations. At your level, Gelman, progress is already challenging. But I can't give points if they're not deserved. Karen? Learn 3 new spells and there's a boost in mental strength. Not bad. But not yet at level 3, can't give higher marks. Elliot? Substantial growth in mental strength. Very good. Almost on the brink of a breakthrough. Your score can be higher. Oh, also taught a mage apprentice. By the way, young one, how many spells can you cast in a day now? 5, Garrett calmly replied. Before the Elder Mage could inquire further, he seized the opportunity and added, "It's been over a month, but I can't break through. Your magehood, could you spare a moment to look into my situation?" Over a month? The Elder Mage raised an eyebrow. Counting on his fingers, it had been just over a month since this youngster began studying magical scripts. That meant, from the moment this young boy became a mage apprentice, he could cast 5 spells a day with such talent. It was truly worth his guidance. First, meditate, then, casually cast a spell. Let me assess the situation. Following the instructions, Garrett complied. The Elder Mage also immersed himself in a meditation environment, carefully sensing the surroundings. After a while, coming out of meditation, frowning deeply, weird your mental strength, manipulating the surrounding magic, feels like. It's as if there's a layer of gauze in between. The utilization isn't too high. At this rate, aiming for a breakthrough. Well, take your time. Chapter 77. After all, evaluating the entire Mage Tower and dedicating such a long time to guide Garrett was quite unusual. The old mage realized that Garrett's issues couldn't be solved overnight, so he redirected his attention with a forceful cough. He turned to Mage Gelman, his expression serious. The cultivation and progress of a mage in this regard, the comprehensive score. The old mage deliberately drew out the suspense. When the people around were impatient, and the mischievous kid was about to roll his eyes, he reluctantly uttered a number, 81. So low. 2 low-level mages complained softly. If the score remained low, and they couldn't pass, the Mage Tower would lose research resources next year at this stage. Nobody would benefit. The old mage had heard these complaints countless times. Considering Gelman was his own disciple, he glanced around, speaking earnestly. This is the responsibility of the supervisors, either focus entirely on breakthroughs or allocate resources to train new mages. Every Mage Tower is a significant resource, and whoever the Magic Council entrusts it to must make returns. This you all must remember. The mages nodded silently. Garrett swiftly calculated his current score. Not too bad, thankfully. As long as he scored 70 on the last item, he could pass this year. However, the final task was magical research. There seemed to have been some issues between Elliot and Karen before. It appeared the progress wasn't smooth. Garrett silently worried about next year's research funds. The old mage had closed the document in his hands and spoke seriously. I've checked before my arrival. None of you had published anything in the journals or submitted any spell models to the council. So, does anyone have any submissions pending or unpublished? Show them to me. The Magic Council evaluated research by the number of papers published. How many journals did you all create, really? Could it be fluffed up? This senior who traveled through time, were you from a university's academic affairs office? Garrett mused, not feeling that papers or research had anything to do with him, a mage apprentice to his right. A few official mages exchanged glances, wearing uneasy expressions. After a moment of silence, Mage Karen took a step forward and spoke softly. I've made some progress in alchemy. Unfortunately, Karen's efforts in alchemy were ultimately deemed inadequate. The young mage felt frustrated, facing examples brought up by the old mage but unable to retort. Next, Elliot tried to present his spell model, but it wasn't completed before and had resources cut off in the end. It received an inadequate evaluation. A moment of silence fell. The old mage looked around and urged, any other achievements? If not, your progress so far can only merit a 50. Wait! Mage Gelman's expression darkened, caught between embarrassment and failing the assessment. He struggled for a second, then gritted his teeth. Elliot, bring that dictionary. A dictionary? Garrett's eyes flashed, looking down at the floor, pretending he hadn't heard anything in a mage tower. With one archmage and 2 secondary mages, being forced to rely on a dictionary for the assessment was already pitiful. If it were known this result came from a mage apprentice, not only would Gelman look bad, but the entire mage tower's reputation might suffer. The KPI sheet read, resource deduction, salary deduction. Maybe his salary wouldn't be affected, he hadn't received anything from the mage tower, but if resources were cut, next year's development would be challenging. Elliot hurried downstairs and, after a while, rushed back holding a book resembling an encyclopedia. The old mage flipped through it, silent, page after page, eyebrow raised. When he reached the end, he turned to Elliot. Your idea? Not mine. Elliot stated solemnly, taking a step aside. He pushed Garrett in front of the old mage. It's his idea and he organized it. I only followed the instructions to write an introduction explaining the approach taken. An interesting little thing. The old mage smiled, stroking his beard. Beside him, the mischievous kid George wrinkled his nose as soon as he heard dictionary mentioned. When Garrett was pushed forward, he craned his neck to take a look, feeling a sudden surge of animosity. Despite holding back, he couldn't resist, stomping his foot and yelling, "It's this book. Grandpa, you don't know, I caught this guy secretly copying books," but instead of kicking him out of the mage tower, Gelman not only let him stay but also said he instructed someone to organize it. George. The old mage frowned. Say one more word and you're out. Humph. The kid huffed heavily. Under his grandfather's gaze, he dared not speak further. The old mage turned back, smoothed his gray beard, and smiled at Garrett. This little thing is interesting. But it doesn't really qualify as a spell model or a creation of magic, you understand, right? Just for this, I can only add 5 points. Do you have any other accomplishments? That would be 55 points. Still 10 points shy of passing. Mage Gelman was speechless, Elliot was speechless, and Karen remained silent, her vibrant blonde hair falling limp on her face, appearing dispirited. Apprentice mages required fewer resources. And this additional 5 points wouldn't help Garrett next year. Garrett looked left and right, steeling himself, and raised a hand. Your Excellency, could I submit the paper you asked me to write? Oh? A paper? The old mage couldn't help but smile. He accepted it and, scanning through, immediately nodded approvingly. Well written, not a single formatting error. Your teacher has put in quite some effort. I already knew that. Garrett silently grumbled. From graduating in postgraduate studies to becoming a senior resident, and from there to becoming an associate director, which step didn't require a paper. This formatting abstract keywords, I could do this blindfolded. The correct formatting, coherent sentences for a novice, this level was enough to earn the old mage's favor. He skimmed through it, nodding occasionally, shaking his head at times, and midway through, cast a spell, reaching out, can't see properly. Magic items have certain requirements. Garrett stood straight before him, chin up, assuming a posture as if defending his thesis. Please look from the second paragraph on the third page to the fifth paragraph on the fourth page, summarizing 7 cases. The conclusion is that the observed subjects should be 5 levels lower than the grade of the magical item. That's not useful then. As expected, the old mage promptly concluded, in that case, I can't give you a high score. Not high? How much? At least bump it up to 70. Chapter 78. Garrett stared earnestly at the elder mage, hoping to sway him with sincerity for a good score. Just a little boost, adding 15 points would do. If they reached 70 points collectively, they'd secure next year's research funds. The elder mage had seen countless such expressions during his years inspecting various places. If the person were a formal mage who understood the Magic Council's assessment rules, he would have just given a score. However, this was a newcomer. A talented one at that. With a heart inclined towards recruiting talent for the council, the elder mage decided to explain a bit more. When it comes to grading magical innovation, the council has a fixed set of standards. It's not about arbitrary scoring. Let's take a look at your paper and see how much it's worth. With a wave of his hand, a colorful light projected onto the wall. Garrett looked up to see the clear criteria for grading magical innovation displayed there. The organized grid, the neat layout, it almost seemed like a projection from a computer, though Garrett, having traversed here months ago, had gained some understanding of magic. He could tell it wasn't a projection but a magical trick, meticulously crafted. He couldn't help but admire the finesse, looking at the content on the wall. Garrett felt a jolt as if his mind had been struck. The grading formula for magical innovation. 10 magic level novelty, creativity, practicality. What on earth was this? Novelty, creativity, practicality. These 3 criteria mirrored the assessments for their research paper topics. That person who had traversed here must have dealt with patents. No, they should have been a humanities student, maybe partly involved in HR functions. Patent agents require a background in science or engineering, so that predecessor might not have been directly involved in patents but could handle related matters in their daily work. Summing it up, the predecessor might have been from a humanities research department at an academic institution involved in assessing educational research topics. Perhaps, Garrett internally mocked, eyes slightly lowered. Scanning the table below the formula, the magic level was straightforward. Level 1 magic multiplied by 1, level 2 by 2, and so on. Regarding creativity and practicality, Garrett scrutinized the table, estimating his potential scores. Creativity, creating a new spell, 10 points, which mine isn't. Increasing magic intensity, 5 to 9 points, which mine doesn't qualify for. Reducing material quantity, price, or scarcity, 2 to 7 points, which mine also doesn't match. Pioneering new usage methods, that's my case. What? Only 1 to 2 points? So low? However, arguing with the system was futile. Garrett sighed and glanced at the practicality formula. Another surge of frustration welled up in him, making him want to vent right there. Practicality score, 1N1, extremely practical. 7 to 9, reasonably practical. 4 to 6, somewhat practical. 1 to 3, impractical. 0, this miraculous formula, only someone who had traversed could write, only a mage could handle. If you were a bit weaker in math, it'd drive you insane. As for my own score, Garrett recalled the elder mage's remark, that's not useful. A bad feeling crept in. As expected, the elder mage smiled and said, your new method does have some utility, but high-level mages rarely suffer fractures, and even if they do, finding magical items 5 levels higher than their own is extremely difficult. For commoners and mage apprentices to encounter items above level 5 magic is also very unlikely. So, as for the practicality of this innovation, I can only judge it as with another wave. A red light marked the impractical column. But sir, Garrett hurriedly argued, this magic is very useful in healing, and it serves an irreplaceable role in current healing practices. As for its cost, isn't it just expensive? Aren't magical items generally costly? Build a hospital, accessible to all patients. CT scanners, MRI machines, even X-ray machines, weren't they expensive when they first came out? A single MRI costs tens of millions, a substantial part of a hospital's surplus funds for half a year. Yet everyone grits their teeth and buys them. As long as the volume of treatments is high enough, the costs can be spread out to a point where every patient can afford it. What's more important than life itself? Moreover, magical items aren't like equipment, they don't depreciate even when kept idle. Garrett wanted to continue arguing, but the elder mage waved his hand, silencing him. No need to say more. The council won't approve something that involves massive investment but is of no use to high-level mages. Even if I were to give you a high score, it would still be rejected. Why bother? Garrett tried to glare, but his efforts were futile. He couldn't make a sound. The elder mage continued with a smile. So, you see, the score is out. Base score 10 points. Magic trick is a level 0 spell, conventionally multiplied by 0.5. For creativity, giving you the benefit of the doubt, multiplying by 2. As for practicality, it can only be multiplied by 1. 10 0.521. The final score is 10 points. Ah! Sighs filled the mage tower. Gelman, Elliot, Karen, and the other low-level mages were disappointed, helpless. To argue further seemed impossible. They'd already presented the achievements of mage apprentices. How could they dare push for more points? Innovation in magic, 65 points, the total score. The elder mage projected the entire table, showing each section, weight, and the individual scores. Finally, he impartially provided the result, 78.55 points. Didn't make it to 80, a D. The overseer's salary deduction and deductions in resources for the entire mage tower next year would be tough. A wave of gloom swept through the mage tower. After concluding, the elder mage's demeanor changed again, smiling to comfort everyone present. It's all right, don't worry too much. Resource deductions by the council are also according to scores. You all are just a bit shy of the passing line. It won't be too many resources deducted. As for your concerns about replacements next year, he turned to his own disciples. I see many here in the mage tower are on the verge of a breakthrough. If 1 or 2 people upgrade next year, the scores will immediately rise. Gelman nodded reluctantly. The elder mage rummaged in his pocket, pulled out a gem-like object, and beckoned Garrett. Come, take this. Gelman is my disciple, and considering your lineage, you're part of our line too. A small token, take it. Chapter 79. What's this? Garrett glanced at the palm of the old mage. Unfortunately, he had no idea it was a spindle-shaped stone, tiny, less than half a finger's breadth, pale yellow, translucent, not shining like a gem. He looked at Gelman, wanting an explanation or at least permission to take it, but before he could speak, 2 voices erupted simultaneously. The Ain stone? Master, that's too valuable. This is mine. Mine. Gelman, the mage, and the old mage's grandson, the brat George, were the voices. Garrett's gaze shifted, catching the brat lunging and snatching the stone. Grandpa said it's mine. He promised. Who said it's for you? The old mage roared, giving chase. The brat wailed as he zigzagged from east to west, then west to east. Despite his age, the old mage struggled to catch up. After a couple of rounds, he stopped, panting heavily, shouting. I said I'd give it to you once you reached level 1 as a mage. You haven't, so it's not yours. Stop. Hand it over. I won't. You. Then came a string of spells. Garrett couldn't discern what they were, only seeing the brat stumble and fall. The old mage lunged, but the brat, agitated, shoved the object into his mouth. I won't give it to you. Cough, cough, cough. Angry shouts and chaos filled the air. Garrett didn't intervene, silently watching from the sidelines. If they didn't want to give him the Ain stone, so be it. His upbringing taught him that what he earned was his. No matter how good someone else's stuff might bite was theirs. Besides, he had no clue what the stone even was. So, what exactly was it? Garrett racked his brain. In his past life, in novels and games, it seemed, vaguely, that he'd heard this name. It was something that flew around a mage's head? An equipment that added attributes to a mage? Seemed quite flashy. Just thinking about it made Garrett grimace. The old mage and the brat, one escaping, the other chasing and yelling it meant nothing to him, merely entertainment. If only he had a phone or internet. He'd have loved to record it and post a video titled, The Brat and His Bearish Grandpa, but then, a cough sounded and Garrett's expression changed. That cough was severe. The brat was rolling on the ground moments ago, shoving the stone into his mouth. What if he'd swallowed it? Choking. Foreign object in the windpipe. Foreign object in the esophagus. A series of bold, highlighted, dangerous symptoms flooded his mind. Garrett spread his stride, rushing over, shouting as he ran, Don't fight. Be careful. Don't choke on it. Midway, his feet slipped. The ground was perfectly even. Yet Garrett slipped, falling flat on his back. Ouch, that hurts. Garrett propped himself up with one hand, massaging his tailbone with the other, wincing in pain. Only then did he hear Elliot's warning nearby, watch out for the grease spell. Next time, could you warn me sooner, big brother? Garrett thought, frustrated. He groaned as he got up. Not far away, the old mage was also helping the brat up, both looking grim. Where's the Ain stone? Spit it out. He swallowed it. The 10-year-old boy sobbed, the old man furrowed his brow, and Gelman, the mage, hurriedly tried to comfort them. He swallowed it. So be it, as long as the child's fine. The Ain stone isn't big, it'll come out intact in a few days, still usable. Hopefully, he did swallow it. The Ain stone wasn't large, its tip not sharp. The probability of it scratching the esophagus was low. As long as it went down the esophagus and luck was on his side, it'd most likely come out normally in a few days. The old mage looked displeased. He wanted to scold but couldn't bring himself to. He pressed the kid's forehead fiercely. Really swallowed it? You. The boy bowed his head, not daring to fuss anymore. The old mage intended to explain to Garrett but found himself speechless. After a moment's hesitation, he muttered, "Made you witness a farce," then pulled the kid and left. "Garrett, you've had a tough day, Gelman." The mage sighed, watching the old man disappear. He reassured Garrett, "We've seen your efforts. Don't worry, for the whole next year, your contributions won't go unnoticed in the mage tower." "Thank you, master. Then, may I take my leave?" Gelman nodded, preoccupied. Garrett seized the chance to slip away. Back in his second-floor dorm, he couldn't sleep. Tossing and turning, he eventually got up, lit a lamp, and began writing and drawing. The plan to clean up the city during the day was shut down midway, and he couldn't swallow that he'd write the plan clearly, in detail, outlining the operations and profit models, and discuss it with the teacher. And the Mage Tower, only today did he realize it also had profit demands that they were interested. Garrett wrote until late into the night before finally dozing off. In his dreams, a diamond-shaped stone kept swirling around him, uncatchable. Twice he attempted to grab it, nearly startling himself awake. The next morning, after his early meditation, Garrett was heading upstairs for breakfast. As he opened the door, he saw a servant outside, wiping away. Upon seeing him, the servant hurriedly approached, offering a small basket of dew-covered berries. Garrett glanced at him oddly. This servant usually took care of the daily needs of the mages, disappearing after tidying up the living room or setting down a pitcher of water. If Garrett ever wanted a late-night snack, he had to forage in the kitchen himself. What was happening now? Heard about the old mage praising him last night? Word spreads fast. He took the basket absent-mindedly, planning to snack on it during his morning reading break. The servant immediately bent down, half smiling, half worried. "Master Mage, I heard our Mage Tower's assessment isn't going smoothly?" Whether it went smoothly or not, what did that have to do with him? Garrett nodded vaguely and proceeded towards the stairs. The servant followed suit, stooping lower. "I heard the Mage Tower might cut resources? Cut salaries? Will they lower our pay? Will they kick us out? Is that really necessary?" Garrett paused, finding it a bit funny. Even if they cut resources, would it affect your pay that much? He waved it off, climbing the stairs. Halfway up, he slapped his forehead in realization. Why would they worry about a few coins? These Mage Tower servants, although they bowed and scraped in the tower, representing it outside, at least they were village heads of sorts. Their demeanor and income put them in the middle class. What they truly feared was a change in leadership at the Mage Tower. Losing their secure jobs, right? Even a mere servant seemed more anxious than him. Chapter 80. Garrett pondered his own sense of detachment. So far, he hadn't received a single allowance or used any materials from the Mage Tower. Even if they deducted his salary and resources next year, his room, books, and the paper he used for copying were probably exempt. He chuckled to himself, continuing to climb the stairs with effort. The dining area was on the 5th floor. The residence of Mage Gelman, it was decent, just a bit too high. He had to climb these stairs thrice daily. Well, as a doctor, he was used to climbing around the hospital, so this wasn't much of a difference. Actually, this was quite a favor. Garrett had heard from the young priest John that in their temple, apprentice priests weren't allowed to dine with the official priests. They had to eat in a separate hall, but maybe Gelman was more lenient, or perhaps with only 4 mages in the tower. Since Garrett became an apprentice, he had meals with the official mages every day. High dining standards aside, he could occasionally catch Gelman for a few questions or pick up some insights by overhearing others' conversations. Just as Garrett reached the 3rd floor, the stairway door opened and 2 official mages with grim faces joined the line. The moment they entered, Garrett felt the atmosphere grow unusually heavy, as if the pressure dropped by 100 pascals. Elliot, in a low voice, complained, It's all because of you. If you hadn't diverted all the resources, would my spell model have been completed by now? Now it's entirely up to you. Karen retorted with a stern face. Improving a spell model is no easy task, you know. Sigh, with fewer resources next year, it'll be even harder to achieve anything. Garrett glanced left and right, lowering his head to focus on climbing the stairs. They filed into the dining hall, and after a while, Mage Gelman also emerged from his room, silent and somber. The group waited. Nearly 15 minutes passed before the old wizard hurriedly came out. His face was dull, eye bags almost touching his cheekbones. Without sitting down, he addressed Gelman. Gelman, please send a few people to bring over the leaders of the temple. George coughed for most of last night. Having trouble breathing now and running a fever, it's been chaotic, and he hasn't even had breakfast. Coughing? Most of the night? And running a fever? Garrett's breath hitched. So, the Ain stone from last night hadn't been swallowed but instead got lodged in the airway, causing inflammation? That was a big problem. Foreign objects in the airway could lead to suffocation and hypoxia. If it was a plant-based object like peanuts or beans, it could cause acute bronchitis with symptoms like high fever, coughing, and coughing up pus. What type of object was the Ain stone? What kind of inflammation could it cause? There was no mention of this in medical textbooks or journals from his past life. Anyway, if the Ain stone was in the lungs, it was a trouble he couldn't handle with the existing tools and medicines. Garrett immediately jumped up. I'll go. I'm familiar with the temple of the war god and the natural god over there. Thank you for that. The old wizard had witnessed the previous rescue and had already inferred the situation. Despite Garrett avoiding mentioning the other temple, he nodded in thanks and turned to Mage Gelman. Then, should we send someone to the spring goddess's temple as well? Elliot, you go. Gelman decisively assigned. Say it's the teacher's grandson who's seriously ill. I have to maintain the magic circle and can't leave. Request them to come over. The two of them mounted horses and dashed off from the mage tower to the city's interior. With horses, the distance wasn't too far. As Elliot entered the city, requested an audience, and explained the situation. The group arrived at the city gate and saw Garrett and the bald bishop standing there. In the distance, a rider approached, a knight with a large box on the saddle, handing it over to Garrett. Garrett accepted with thanks, then turned to the bishop, saying, I suspect something got stuck in the airway. Kid, with something stuck in your airway, you're carrying such a big box? Garrett smiled, dodging the topic. The group returned to the mage tower and, halfway there, met Elder Elwyn. Entering together, Elliot followed behind. Climbing upstairs with them and was shocked upon seeing George. The poor kid was curled up in bed, his face flushed, occasionally erupting into coughs. His chubby cheeks seemed drained, strands of pale gold hair clinging weakly to his forehead. Several experienced healers surrounded him, checking his temperature, listening to his cough, going over the details of what had happened. Finally, the bald bishop drew a conclusion. Since the Ain stone is missing and he's coughing like this, most likely it's lodged in his lungs. It's possible. The Grand Priest nodded in agreement. He lowered his head in prayer, then a faint blue light brushed over the boy. It was the successful healing technique from the Spring Goddess's temple, curing diseases and restoring health, while slightly inferior in healing injuries. It excelled in curing ailments. As the light dissipated, the boy's forehead beaded with sweat, his flushed face calming down instantly. The old wizard grasped the Grand Priest's hands, expressing gratitude, then asked, So, if the Ain stone isn't removed, will he continue to fall ill? Certainly. The Grand Priest didn't speak, but his expression said it all. Unable to resist, the old wizard pressed on. Can you find a way to deal with that Ain stone? Well, the Grand Priest hesitated, reluctant to intervene. He glanced at Elder Elwyn, who pondered for a moment before softly saying, Judging by the cause and effect, I can only guess it's stuck in his lungs. Garrett, what's your opinion? Watson, what do you think? Garrett silently supplied the voiceover for Elder Elwyn. Seeing everyone's attention focused on him, he stepped forward, serious. I also suspect it's stuck in the lungs. To confirm if it is and precisely where it is, I need to perform an examination. An examination? The old wizard raised his eyebrows. All three temple leaders had seen his grandson, but not one had mentioned an examination. And now this young lad casually mentions an examination. How do you plan to examine? Please wait a moment. Garrett slightly bowed, retreating to a corner, opening the box. The knight had brought him all the way from the horse. 7 to 8 people's gazes fixed on him as he lifted a copper tube from the black velvet padding inside the box. With one hand habitually covering the tube's far end, he approached the boy's bedside, calmly instructing, "Come on, sit up, undo your shirt. Pull it aside, expose your entire chest." "I won't. Go away." The boy screamed, attempting to kick. Garrett didn't argue, calmly taking 2 steps back, turning to the old wizard. "Hey, can't you control your kid?"